Or on the suspect from people who knew him. The opposition pushes Justin Trudeau to denounce Donald Trump. And it's a turning point night after the first 11 days of President Trump. We'll ask three key questions which may determine the shape of the world ahead. Grisly details of the mass shooting in a Quebec City mosque are emerging tonight. The assailant had two guns, opened fire, left the mosque to reload. He came back and started shooting again. In all, 25 people were hit, 6 of them fatally. Those 6 men were all fathers, professionals, and academics. Several were immigrants and chose to make Quebec City their home. One of the men, the owner of the local grocery store, was well known for helping newcomers adapt and integrate into Canada. At least one funeral will take place Sunday. As for the survivors, 2 are still in critical condition. In a few minutes, Joanna Remiliotis will look further at some of the victims. The dead are being remembered tonight at a church service. And we're also learning more about the suspect. Alison Northcott leads our coverage from Quebec City once again tonight. Alison.
Peter, people gathered at this church tonight for a mass to honor the victims. It's one of many displays of solidarity in the aftermath of this tragedy. A moment of silence at the university where one of the victims was a professor. This is also where the suspect went to school. People who knew him described 27-year-old Alexandre Bissonnette as introverted and quiet. He had a job with Quebec's blood donor services in a call center. Alexandre Bissonnette lived in this apartment building on a cul-de-sac in Sainte-Foy. It's the same neighborhood as the mosque and less than a kilometer away. At the building today, neighbors were in disbelief. Simon Gagnon has lived down the hall since last summer.
And I was so shocked, and I'm still on the shock, really. It was like 10 meters from here, and I'm still on shock.
Éric Desbois met Bissonnette at a conservative political discussion group and believes Bissonnette left the group because it was too moderate.
I think he wants to speak immigration or Islamism, and in our group we speak of debt or economy or public management. Is not interesting for him. That's why he left.
Desbois was chilled to hear Bissonnette's name linked to the attack. Yesterday, he contacted police who interviewed him about the suspect's political views. One acquaintance who studied with Bissonnette at university and last saw him about a year ago says his views were right-wing, but not radical or extremist.
I think that in the last year, something happened. He radicalized a lot because he seemed just a normal right-wing individual.
Radio-Canada has learned the shooter approached the mosque with 2 weapons Sunday night, a long gun and a pistol registered to Bissonnette. But sources say the long gun didn't work and that Bissonnette allegedly dropped it in the snow. Mohamed Haroun arrived at the scene moments after the shooting before police.
I saw several bodies inside. It's a complete shock.
Police have not commented on the motive behind the killings, but the deaths have prompted a discussion in Quebec about tolerance and tone.
When I say that words matter, it means that words can hurt. Words can be knives slashing at people's conscience. And we have to be more cognizant of this.
The Premier says that this event has marked Quebec and that it will leave scars. But he says the outpouring of support proves that Quebecers are open, loving, and caring people.
All right, Alison, thanks very much. Well, as we saw both at last night's vigil and at tonight's Mass, many in Quebec City are still in shock after unimaginable violence and immense loss. But 6 families are at the center of this tragedy. They are in retreat, struggling to come to terms with these deaths. Joanna Remiliotis has that part of the story tonight.
Normand Richard's tribute is stark, singular. He's come to Azedine Soufian's shop, now a makeshift shrine, to pray for a man he didn't know.
Par amour, uniquement.
For love only, for love, he says, to bring an energy of love. I still have faith in human beings. That's my prayer. It's a humble offering, and just steps from the crime scene, there are hundreds more for the 6 men killed. It's the ritual of public mourning, and it touches those hurting the most.
We're still shocked, right? So we aren't really sure how to react to it because it was sudden.
Ba and other family drove here from Montreal today. They've come to this apartment building where grief now resides. Her uncle, Mamadou Tanou Barry, and his friend, Ibrahima Barry, both lived in the same building. They left to pray together the night they were killed. Between them, they leave 6 children behind. Fathers with families with young children, he says. That's what's so hard, that there's widows and young children left behind. Inside, Suleiman Ba stands outside a widow's door to speak for her because she simply can't. As a leader of the Guinean community here, he tries to be the brave one. I can tell you honestly, yesterday I was crying. I couldn't sleep. I was so overwhelmed. It could have happened to me. Ba was with both men the night they died. Quebec, he says, can be an insular place, but until now, never felt like a threatening one. Personally, I'm not afraid, he says, but I'm afraid of the future consequences, barbaric acts that could be repeated. That fear is real, but for now, it's being met with messages of solidarity. Neighbor and friend Manon Labrec has been piecing them together for days.
I love my country. I love those people, and those people, they are Canadian as much as I am, and they live in Quebec, and they are part of us. They are part of this city.
Grief, so personal, is also now so public, a burden so many are offering to share. Joanna Brumeliotis, CBC News, Quebec City.
Fox News tonight deleted a tweet about the mosque shooting after a complaint from the Prime Minister's office. Fox was among the media outlets that yesterday reported that the shooter was Moroccan. The reporting was corrected, but posts from Fox and some other organizations continued to circulate online. Coming up, the UN goes to bat for refugee kids deprived of their childhood.
School, home, food, that was peace.
But who will cover the staggering cost? Plus, President Trump seems poised for a global shakeup. Turning Point looks at how far he can go and what it means for your security. Donald Trump announced his nominee for Supreme Court Justice tonight.
Today, I am keeping another promise to the American people by nominating Judge Neil Gorsuch.
If the 49-year-old from Colorado is confirmed, the court will return to a conservative majority. Gorsuch is an originalist, meaning he believes the Constitution should be interpreted as the Founding Fathers would have interpreted it. He's never written on the landmark abortion case Roe v. Wade, but pro-lifers say his record against doctor-assisted suicide leaves them optimistic. The nominee may serve as a distraction tonight, but it could not overshadow the continued fallout in the U.S. today to Trump's travel ban. Some 900 State Department officials signed a letter of dissent over the order, and the administration hinted the 3-month ban could become indefinite. Paul Hunter has more.
For so many Americans, it's still a kind of stunned disbelief at what's unfolding. More protests tonight in Minneapolis and in Louisiana, and today in South Carolina. And in Texas, with fury over Trump's new restrictions on refugees and on immigrants from certain Muslim countries.
This is really what America looks like.
And as protests raged on, more lawsuits from the state of Virginia.
This order is unlawful, unconstitutional.
The state of Massachusetts.
My office is filing suit to challenge the executive order.
from an Arab civil rights group in Michigan.
But Donald Trump does not trump the Constitution.
As corporate America lines up against Trump as well. This Google-sanctioned demonstration yesterday came as executives from Facebook, Netflix, Apple, Starbucks, Ford, Nike, and others also spoke out against Trump's actions. When Toronto Raptors star, the Philadelphia-born Kyle Lowry, was asked about Trump's order, he held back little.
I think it's bullshit. I think it's absolute bullshit.
The list of those opposing Trump includes a reported 1,000 or so U.S. Foreign Service workers said to have signed a scathing, multi-page internal memo condemning Trump's order for being a throwback to some of the worst times in our history. And so, on Capitol Hill today,
the level of incompetence of this administration already, only 10 days into the presidency, is staggering.
But standing up to Trump can come with a price. As acting U.S. Attorney General Sally Yates learned yesterday, fired by Trump for saying she wouldn't enforce his order on refugees and immigration. Said the White House today on appointees who oppose Trump's agenda.
Their job is to fulfill that, and if they don't like it, then they shouldn't take the job. But it is the president's agenda that we are fulfilling here.
This being Trump's second week in office, the real question, where does all of this go from here? Opposition mounts, but so too Trump's resolve. Indeed, strengthened by the notion he's merely carrying out what he promised. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Parliament is holding an emergency debate tonight on the Trump travel order. The opposition demanding the Prime Minister take a firm stand against it and tell Trump as much. But as Katie Simpson tells us, it may not be that simple.
Late into the evening, opposition MPs urged the government to do more for immigrants and refugees in the wake of the U.S. travel ban.
A ban against individuals based on race, on religion, or country of birth simply cannot be tolerated.
The emergency debate comes as the Prime Minister is facing increasing pressure to speak out.
Why is he refusing to denounce this policy that breaches fundamental human rights and that will inevitably have consequences for Canada?
We are protecting Canadian jobs and growing the economy by having a constructive working relationship with our most important trade partner and ally. And we're also standing up for Canadian values and principles.
Justin Trudeau has avoided directly criticizing Donald Trump, perhaps in the hopes of having a clean slate for their first meeting, which is expected to be confirmed in the coming days.
Justin Trudeau's priority is to serve Canadian interests, and he would not serve Canadian interests by picking a fight with the President of the United States.
This strategy isn't working for everyone. British Prime Minister Theresa May is facing backlash for her reluctance to denounce the policy after her visit to Washington. Trudeau did publish this tweet after the U.S. travel ban was announced, a potentially risky move for the Prime Minister's office, but one that fell short of condemnation.
But working cooperatively with our biggest friend, largest trading partner, is perhaps the wisest approach.
I don't think governments should denounce other people.
Canada's former Governor-General, who presided over a citizenship ceremony today, agrees with the government's approach so far. But Adrian Clarkson warns the divisive tensions in the U.S. could have ripple effects here at home.
We've been hearing the rhetoric of such horror, ignorance, and hatred that we are in danger of being smothered by a tsunami.
When Trudeau and Trump do meet, the Prime Minister plans to highlight the success of Canada's immigration system. But his top priority for those talks will be ensuring that trade continues between countries. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Ottawa.
There are refugee claimants who make it into Canada secretly. We've told you their stories before. They walk across the border from the U.S., usually in the dead of night, to claim asylum. What's new? A noticeable spike this past weekend that refugee workers say was a direct result of Trump's order. Cameron McIntosh has the story.
First of all, we came from Djibouti.
We're concealing their identities because they fear political persecution back home.
They are we cannot say of full freedom.
On Friday night, this couple, who managed to make it to the United States, passed by these fields and snuck into Canada at Emerson, Manitoba, too fearful to apply for asylum in the United States.
after what the political and the changement of the new government, we felt that our application couldn't be done or accepted.
Located between Minneapolis and Winnipeg, Emerson sees a lot of refugee traffic. This weekend saw one of its biggest spikes.
I'm establishing new vetting measures.
It coincided with Donald Trump's executive order on immigration. The difference now of those crossing, most aren't even bothering to apply in the States, says this immigration counselor.
They are really scared of what's going on in the U.S. And that U.S. is not welcoming refugees and asylum seekers anymore. So they just use the U.S. as a transit.
Crossing a border to file a refugee claim is legal under international convention. Under Canada's Safe Third Country Agreement, an applicant can't make a claim to a border official from the U.S. There are calls to see that policy changed.
If the U.S. Is not going to protect them and they end up being sent back to face persecution, then we are also sharing in a guilt for having sent them back to persecution.
Canada's new immigration minister isn't prepared to go that far.
This is an evolving situation. We intend to be on top of it.
Meanwhile, aid groups are preparing for more applicants.
No matter what the political rhetoric might be, at the end of the day, we all need to be keepers of our brothers and sisters.
So far, the people we've met, like the real Canadians, they are helpful. They are welcoming people.
Now, just getting to Canada doesn't guarantee anything. In each circumstance, refugee claimants have to prove their case in a refugee board hearing. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The United Nations Court has ordered Turkey to free a UN judge who is one of thousands of people detained after last year's failed coup attempt. Aydin Seyfa Akay is both a judge and a diplomat. The UN says his imprisonment violates his diplomatic immunity and the principle of judicial independence. Austria is planning to ban full-face veils such as the Muslim niqab and burqa in public places. The coalition government also wants to ban judges, police officers, and public prosecutors from wearing headscarves. And a few years after Second World War codebreaker Alan Turing was exonerated of sexual offense convictions, Britain today pardoned thousands of gay and bisexual men of similar convictions going back decades under anti-gay laws that have since been abolished. The hunt for a new Canadian jet fighter has taken years, occupying minds in this government and the previous one, but now a decision seems to be nearing takeoff. The CBC's Murray Brewster has tracked down the details.
Meet the newest jet fighter soon to be in the Canadian Air Force, the Boeing Super Hornet. The Liberal government announced last fall it wanted to buy 18 Super Hornets as an interim measure towards fully replacing the country's aging CF-18s. But how much will it cost?
At the appropriate time, when we have all the necessary information, that price tag will be explained to Canadians.
So that means the price tag will be explained after the deal is done. The Liberal government, which stakes a claim on transparency, has not even attempted to publicly ballpark this sole-source multi-billion-dollar plan. To understand how much the Super Hornets could cost, all you have to do is look at Pentagon data. According to U.S. Defense Department documents, the cost of the Super Hornet Canada wants to buy is roughly $85 million Canadian. There is also approximately $26 million for equipment, such as radar and engines, another $3.8 million in Pentagon service charges, and a possible $8 million for development costs. The total for each Super Hornet could run between $115 and $123 million. Preliminary internal D&D estimates say the whole program might cost between $5 to $7 billion. But Sajjan cautions that's not a price tag.
There is no, right now, price tag.
Although the Super Hornet's manufacturer says it is a good guide.
But the U.S. Navy documents the U.S. government documents are a good reflection.
Boeing Super Hornets have competed against Lockheed Martin's F-35 stealth jets, which the Liberals have dismissed as too expensive. U.S. President Donald Trump has been battering Lockheed Martin to bring down the price of the F-35. Analysts wonder if the Liberals' political argument is about to crash and burn.
So the difference in price between an F-35 or a Super Hornet is not going to be all that large.
All of this frustrates the opposition in Ottawa.
Just go straight to a competition and make sure that we get the best plane for the taxpayers and for the Royal Canadian Air Force.
The deal for Canada to buy Super Hornets still needs congressional approval, but there is little doubt that the plan is about to take off. Canadian Air Force officials were down here just recently talking with Boeing engineers about customization options for the new aircraft. Murray Brewster, CBC News, St. Louis.
Workers in New Brunswick are getting closer to restoring all the power, but a week after a devastating ice storm, the job's still not quite done. Several thousand customers remain cut off, with supplies running low. So today, the province said it will buy $100,000 worth of food and work with food banks to get it to those in need. A Calgary man has been found not guilty of sexual assault in a second trial after the headline-grabbing conduct of the judge in his first trial. That judge, Robin Camp, made inappropriate comments to the complainant, including asking her why she couldn't just keep her knees together. That landed him in front of the Canadian Judicial Council. It recommended he lose his job. And a prominent Toronto clergyman is not guilty of sex crimes alleged to have happened in the 1970s. Brent Hawkes was tried in Nova Scotia. The Order of Canada recipient is a well-known advocate for the LGBTQ community and officiated at former NDP leader Jack Layton's 2011 funeral. Former Liberal leader Stéphane Dion will be Canada's next ambassador to Germany and the European Union.
In its own way, the European continent is facing the same challenges as us.
Dion announced he would leave federal politics earlier this month. He was a member of Parliament since 1996. He was in the cabinets of Jean Chrétien, Paul Martin, and Justin Trudeau. Prince Edward Island has signed a health deal with Ottawa. It joins the other Atlantic provinces as well as Saskatchewan and the Territories. All the premiers walked away from health talks in December, rejecting Ottawa's offer, holding out for a new health accord. New Brunswick was the first to sign a bilateral deal days later.